Today we'll do a quick overview of the equalization application, which is at ratiostudy.org, and we'll talk about a few different scenarios. So how to validate multi-parcel sales, how to attach documents to sales, how to verify when no data available is shown, how and when to upload CAMA exports, and how to finalize and send your values to the state. So the basic process is step one, select the deed or the transfer that you want to validate. That will go to step two, where you select the appropriate matching assessing record. And the system will give you several options, and what it's doing is looking for the book and page of that transaction to match the book and page of one of your CAMA records. It's looking for the transfer date to match the last transfer date. It's also looking for the grantee or the grantor to be the owner that was listed. And if a Pa34 has been filed, it's checking the address, the map and lot, and the GIS ID. So your job on step two is to select the correct parcel and move on to step three to verify the information. So you'll be verifying the assessed value, the sale price, the land use, whether or not it's waterfront. You can add any notes that you have about the sale. You can put in any exclusion codes if you don't want the sale to be used in the equalization study, and you can attach documents. Now we will have values for the assessment, the sale price, and the land use. So you won't actually have to key that in unless you want to override what we got from your CAMA export. So a little bit about sales exclusion. Sales are excluded from equalization because of circumstances which cause the sale price not to reflect market value. So it's not an arm's length transaction, meaning a transaction that happened on the open market with a willing buyer, a willing seller, who are not under any duress. So some examples of things that you might exclude from the study: if it was a sale to a family member, that might not be fair market value. If there was a government entity on either side of the transaction, if there was a financial entity, a bank, if it was a timeshare, so it did not transfer 100% interest in the property, it was just for a week, you would exclude that. And then improvements post-sale pre-assessment or post-assessment pre-sale, meaning the property that you were assessing as of April 1 is not the property that transacted. So this might be on April 1, there was no detached garage. And when it sold in September, they had added a detached garage. So your assessed value does not reflect the property that was sold. So let's do a quick demonstration here. Bear with me 1 second as I bring this up. So we're just going to log in. This is our test site. So we will log in here. And for a quick orientation, our tabs across the top here correspond to the explanations over here. So clicking the continue button here is exactly like clicking the verify tab. So there are little explanations of what you do in each section here. If you do have access to multiple towns, you can access them here. If we look on the right-hand side, we have our dashboard. So we have a total of 9 records that are available to verify. We have verified 4 of them, so you can see the status tracker here. You'll see any users that have access to your town. So you can expect to see if you have a contractor that helps you with equalization, they'll be listed there. So let's go ahead and get into verifying some sales. So if I go in here, I have my table of available sales. I can control what I'm looking at. It starts with show only unverified. So these are the sales that are in your queue. You can switch it to show only verified, or we could look at the sales that were pre-excluded. Now you don't need to take any action on the pre-excluded sales. They're just here for transparency so that you can see which sales have automatically been excluded from equalization. And there are a number of different tests that we run to exclude them. You'll notice a lot of them have a calculated sale price of 0, meaning they did not pay any transfer tax, because in this case, they were just transferring to a trust. You'll also see the minimum transfer tax, which is $40. It calculates to a sale price of $2,600. So these are not available for you to validate. There's no green go button here. But if you do look through them and you see that there is a transaction here that you would like to use, you can request that DRA include that, and they can make that available to you. So we'll go back to only unverified. So this table format, you'll see all across the application. It is sortable by each column. It sorts by Verno by default, which is just date order. Verno is the verification number, just sequential number of the sales in your jurisdiction. So you can search by anything in the table, whether it's a book page, a name, things from the PA34. If you have a particular deed that you want to verify, you can find it quickly that way. So let's go in and verify a sale. So simply clicking that green button, and here we get one of our scenarios. It says no data available. So this is that step 2 where we're trying to match up a deed with a camera record, and the system can't find one. So this happens sometimes if a property transacts multiple times during the equalization year, and this is one of the earlier transactions. So if I sell to my neighbor sells to a contractor redevelops it and sells to the new owner, and I'm looking at that first transaction where it's me to my neighbor, neither one of us are really associated with the property anymore. So that is usually why the system can't find the record. In this case, we just do an override search. I don't know if Ackworth has an Elm Street. I guess it doesn't. Not a Main Street either. I have to look up a street in Ackworth. I don't know my streets. Crescent Lake. So when you're putting in the street name, I usually put in less to just see how the data is formatted. So in this case, it's RD, not road spelled out. So now I know that, and I can find the record that I'm looking for. You can also use this search in concert. That will search the results that you've gotten. So that's how you get over if you see no data available. And I'll touch on this later, but it's also good to upload your CAMA data before you start validating sales. That will make this step 2 go much more smoothly if we have up-to-date data. So that is the override. I'll demonstrate another thing here, and that is if you have a multi-parcel sale, you can select multiple records and they'll go down here into our bottom table. So if this one deed transacted multiple properties, you can add them. And if I click next, it brings me on to that 3rd step of verifying. I do want to point out here, it shows sum because it's adding up the current year and previous year assessed values for all of those properties that we selected. So if you get to this screen and the values look off and you see sum, that's because you might have accidentally selected multiple properties to attach to this deed. You'll also notice the property code says multiple found. So in the event that you've selected multiple properties, some are commercial, some are residential, you'll have to actually select what the controlling property code is. You can also just go back here and maybe that was incorrect. So we'll maybe remove that and remove that. Now we just have one sale or one property, I'm sorry. Now we go in, we don't see that sum. So we've got our property code here listed. You can override that if it didn't come in correctly. If it has a modifier code, you can add that. So waterfront, all of that stuff you can see here. If your community has a special code, not every community does have a special code. Special code would be Moulton Borough, for example, might have a code for Lake Winnipesaukee and a separate code for Squam Lake because their values are substantially different. If the property is in current use, you can select that it's in current use, and it will tell you want to put the full ad valorem value in these. So this is not the current use value. You want to make sure you're doing the full value, and then your reduced current use value down here. Now you do have property or sales notes, so you can copy and paste right out of your CAMA and put in any notes you have about the sale that might be helpful. You can also pick your exclusion code. Number of different exclusion codes here. Some of them do require you put in an explanation. If they do and you don't put one in, you'll get an error message that tells you need to explain further. You can also pick two of the exclusion codes. So if it was an abutter sale and a family transaction, you don't really know which one you want to code it as, you can just code it as both. DRA will pick which one controls. So this is exactly what the error will look like if you mess something up. I said it had current use and I didn't put in a current use value, so it's going to yell at us. So this is the final validation screen. This is where you do your file attachments. So this is exactly like a regular email attachment, but you do have to put in a description. You can spell description right too. The reason you put in a description is because the DRA is reviewing about 30,000 sales a year, many of which have attachments. So just give them a hint as to why you're putting that there. It might be a sales questionnaire that came back with some information about why you're excluding it. Some people will put a copy of the building permit if they said that there was a new garage put up. A copy of the MLS listing, sometimes the full property record card if you want to point something out. So that's not required by any means, but if you do have something that would help them in justifying usually why the sale was excluded, you can attach that accordingly. So we'll click finish there. Now let's do one a little bit more quickly here. So we just go through. Again, it's giving us a number of different options. Our job here is to select the correct option. And we have some information here. Looks like they wrote the parcel ID in kind of a strange method. You can also view the Pa34, which is the informational return that goes to DRA. And this has good info about the transaction. So if we scroll down, you've got the real estate. It's a land-only transaction, we can see. If we go to the next page, warranty deed, they declared the sale price. They didn't say that there was anything going on that would exclude it, so they can declare family sale, sheriff sale, etc. And you'll notice this was e-filed. That's why it's in this format. You might sometimes see a scanned image of a paper Pa34. With any of these, we can export out to Excel, PDF, or Word. So if you wanted to export out to PDF, take a look at the form, you could do that. And you'll see any reports that pop up like this, you can always export out. So we'll just go ahead and pick, we'll say that that's the correct sale. We'll click next. So you'd again update any of these. If you needed to exclude the sale, you would do that here. And we can also use our save and next button. So save and next will actually just grab the next sale on the in the queue and bring you right to step 2. And we're striking out here with the no data in the table. We'll just go to the only road I know in Ackworth, grab, and then we can go save and next sale. So you can go fairly quickly. And again, this would be resolved by uploading new CAMA data. So let's go back over to the PowerPoint here, and we'll go over a couple of other things. So sending CAMA exports. I do recommend that you send your export before you start validating sales. Now, your values don't have to be final for the year. If you haven't finished valuation and haven't submitted your MS1, that's okay. You can send us exports anyway. If you use Patriot or Vision, you can either email or upload the export right into the application. If you use Avatar, they actually send the exports over directly to us. So once you send that over, wait for confirmation that your data is uploaded, and then you're good to go into the system and start validating sales. Now, if your values aren't final for the year, that's okay. You can go and validate sales, but once you do finalize your values, just send another CAMA export over, and we'll update all the assessed values for the sales that you've already validated. So I do want to show you where in the system that is. So if you go to utilities, This is where you can upload your CAMA data. You can also look for instructions on how to upload for the various CAMA systems here. And again, here is where you would select these are your final values for the year. And then again, it's just a file attachment like an email. So just a couple more items here. Switch back over to the PowerPoint. So DRA may have questions regarding a particular sale after you submit. So you'll want to watch your email for notifications that say that you have sale or questions pending. When you do have questions, you can log in, go to the questions tab and answer them. You can also log in periodically and you can actually see if the state has been reviewing your sales. So you can kind of see what they're up to. The important thing with questions is once you've answered the questions, you click the complete and return to state button, which is on the questions interface. So we'll take a look at that and we'll talk a little bit more about submission and then we'll wrap up. So if I go over to the questions tab, I don't have any there, I'll go to a different year. So we'll go back and look at some questions for last year. So we can see we have the questions, they're all marked completed by DRA. So when you have questions, you'll be able to add a reply, click save, and that'll tack on to the thread here that we have going with DRA. So you can answer all your questions pretty quickly. If you need to make an adjustment to the sale itself, you can click on the sale record right here. Sometimes you'll just need to make a data adjustment to that record so you can get to it right there. And then this is the important piece, send your sales back to the state. So once you're done and you've answered all the questions, send them back to DRA. They will review them and then mark them as completed if they're satisfied with your answer. So a little bit about submitting your sales here, and I'll go back to 2020. You do have your link right here that allows you to release your sales to DRA. So the procedure is once you have gone through and validated all of your sales, they need to be approved by your assessing officials. So if you're in a city, that would usually be the city assessor, or everywhere else, it's your board of selectmen. So you can electronically send your sales to DRA by clicking this button. But you also, and it's not here yet, they haven't put up the pink sheet packet yet. You also have to download the pink sheet packet, which has a sign off for your assessing officials, which again are your select board. So you would download that and then submit it to your select board. I usually use one of the sales list reports. So we could do the quick sales list, export that out to Excel or PDF, and then that will give them all of the validated sales so that they can do their review and sign off accordingly. So once they've signed that pink sheet, you just upload that right here. And again, this is just a standard document upload, again, like an email attachment. So you can put that in, and that is the final step. So DRA can start reviewing your sales before you submit the pink sheet, but they will not finalize your ratio before they have the pink sheet. So make sure you remember to get that signed off and submitted. And of course, they will remind you if you don't do that. I have one last slide here, and then I'm happy to take any questions. So the help button on the application, I'll show you right where it is actually pretty helpful. If you click help, or I think it's helpful. It brings you to a bunch of different topics. So if you want help with the MS1, if you want help creating accounts, uploading your CAMA data. So if you forget how to do that, there's some instructions here. So the help button is actually, I think, fairly helpful. There are also recorded trainings that are up there. So a lot of resources there. You can also call your DRA equalization auditor. So Natalie, Cindy, or Linda. Or you can call or email Axiomatic Tech Support. And the distinction between those two is if you don't know what you should be doing, i.e. should you exclude this sale, you have some strange ownership that you want to discuss, you'd call DRA. if you know exactly what you want to do, but you can't seem to make the system do it, you can't log into your account, you're getting an error, that would be axiomatic tech support. So DRA helps with kind of policy sort of things and protocols, and we help with actually doing it if you know what you want to do. So I'll leave this screen up with that contact info. That is all we have for the training, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.